Hey goddesses, it's Rachel Abby and thanks so much for stopping by at my channel. I make videos all about law of attraction, adulting, yoni wellness, yoni steaming, natural hair and so much more. So if you are interested in any of those topics, definitely hit the subscribe button. Now in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the reasons why I had a quarter life crisis in the months running up to my 30th birthday. So in December of 2019, that's when I turned 30, but I feel like my life was just, I don't even know how to describe it, but I definitely experienced a quarter life crisis in the few months approaching my 30th birthday. So in this video I'm going to explain to you exactly why I had a quarter life crisis, like what was going on for me in my mind at that time, and then also what I have learnt coming out of that period and, you know, living as a 30-year-old woman. So I do hope you find this video helpful and insightful, and if not, I just hope that you find comfort in listening to someone who is on a very similar life journey and path to you share their own experience of how they're adulting in this world. So yeah, hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so this isn't a tutorial. I'm just going to be talking as I'm doing my makeup, as I'm getting ready, and I'll probably have to clip my hair back at some point. But yeah, I guess getting right into it. So why I had a quarter life crisis. Now I think I've been like sharing bits and pieces about my quarter life crisis on my channel in quite a few recent videos. I do know that I've mentioned it quite a few times, and in essence it was, I think it started a few months before my 30th birthday. So I turned 30 in December of 2019, and it was probably from around September, I would say, or October, that I just started feeling really, I guess, like shaky. I guess, I don't know what the correct word is to describe how I felt, but I just started feeling pretty shaky. And at the time, I didn't know why I was feeling like that, but with hindsight, I do believe I was having essentially a quarter life crisis, because I was aware that my 30th birthday was coming up, and I was, I guess, naturally thinking about life so far and what I'd achieved and what I hadn't achieved. And yeah, I was really thinking about goals and where I wanted my life to be like, and there was just a lot of dissatisfaction. There was a lot of dissatisfaction about how my life was currently, and I think the main source of frustration and dissatisfaction was my career. I remember I used to wake up for work every single morning, and it was just such a struggle for me to get myself out of bed, to get myself up. I remember every single morning I would wake up dreading going to work, or if I happened to be working from home that day, I would wake up dreading having to log on to my laptop and start working. And it started to worry me when I realized that I was feeling like this basically every single day for an extended period of time. I started to wonder, like, is something actually wrong with me? Like, am I depressed again? My eyebrows aren't identical. I find it so hard doing my, like, talking and doing my eyebrows at the same time. Gosh. Let me try and save these eyebrows. But yeah, I just started feeling like, God, I think this is the best I can do. I probably should have done my eyebrows before I started filming, but it's a bit too late now. But yeah, anyway, so I just found myself like waking up every morning absolutely dreading having to log on to work or go into work. And I guess that period in itself made me realise how unhappy I was at that point in time in my job and in my career, because I really shouldn't have been feeling like that. You know, I don't think anyone should feel that negatively about going to the job they go to, you know, having to do the job they do. And to be honest, what was going through my mind at that time was the fact that I had been in my current job, I had been in my job for about a year and a half, and I just didn't feel like there was any realistic or like near prospect of me advancing in my current company in terms of promotions and progression, so moving up the career ladder. I had interviewed for, I'd say, a few jobs over the course of that year and a half. I always made it to the final round of interviews, and then they would pick someone else for the job, like someone else would get the job at the very last stage. And after that happening repeatedly, it just gets demotivating after a while. It becomes disheartening, like having to try and remain positive despite having those knockbacks. And I just realised, like, in the run up to my 30th, I was just thinking about, okay, like, now I really, really want to advance in my career and increase my salary and gain new skills and just do something a bit different, because I've been doing like the same kind of work for about 5 years. So I was bored in my job, and I was also really ready for a change and ready for a challenge and ready for a salary increase. So when that wasn't happening, when I kept getting those knockbacks, I just started to feel really down, and I started to feel really disheartened at my company. So that's the reason why I felt really down about my career at that stage, because I wasn't happy. I really wanted advancement, and I just felt like it was out of reach. Like, no matter, doing really well at interviews, talking to recruiters on the phone, despite doing all of that, I just felt like my dreams weren't materializing. So that's why I felt really disheartened in my career, and it did make me feel pretty, not insecure, but it just definitely made me start to question, like, will I ever, actually no, that's wrong, I wasn't questioning will I ever achieve my career goals. What I was questioning was, when is this going to happen? Like, I knew it was going to happen at some point in terms of getting the role that I want, getting a promotion, but I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And not the feeling of not knowing when something was going to happen, when you really desired it so much and you felt like you were doing a lot, you were taking a lot of steps, a lot of actions to make it happen, that was really difficult for me to deal with. So that's why I was just feeling really down about work, and I would just really dread going into work. And even whilst I was there, it was, I think, like the most difficult parts of my work day was just the getting up and forcing myself to get up and get ready for work, get dressed. I think by the time I reached the office and settled down and had a cup of tea and spoke to, said hi to a few people at work, the feeling kind of wore off, because you're so busy at work, you just find yourself not really having time to even think about, am I happy? You're just kind of just focusing on getting work done. That's how it was for me. So whilst I was at work, I wasn't really feeling too down. It was more waking up in the mornings and realising that I've got to get up and go to a job that I am really bored in and that I just don't feel fulfilled in, and I've got to do it all over again today. That was really disheartening. So my career and my lack of career progression definitely was a source of frustration, and that was a major part of my quarter life crisis, I would say. And then also another thing that I wasn't happy with, and I'm really sorry if this, I'm not trying to be negative in this video at all. I'm so sorry if it's coming across that way, but I'm just, you know, being honest and open and sharing with you exactly why I feel I went through a quarter life crisis, because I know it's really, I think it's quite encouraging when, you know, we realise that we're not the only ones feeling the way we feel, that there are actually other people that are experiencing similar things or going through similar things, because it just kind of makes us feel a bit better knowing that we're not the only ones. So that's why I'm sharing this with you today. So yeah, so as I was saying, another reason why I feel, another thing that I feel contributed to my quarter life crisis was my living situation. So a lot of you know that I was renting before, and then I moved back into my parents' house in March of 2018 for various reasons, but one of the major reasons was because I realised that you know, it was going to take me an awful number of years to actually save up for a house deposit if I continued renting. So I realised that in order to quicken the whole process of buying my own home and getting on the property ladder, I had to move back home and start saving money properly. So that was one of the reasons why I moved back home. And the first year I feel of living back home, I don't really feel it was difficult for me mentally, because it was a choice I made. Like, I decided to move back home, and I was able to see my savings increase as a result of moving back home. So I think the first year of living back home with my parents, I was pretty happy. But I guess from like the second year onwards, so I guess April of 2019 onwards, I think it's a bit difficult staying motivated when you're working on long-term goals, you know, when you know that a goal is going to take you at least a couple of years, or even like 3 or 4 years to achieve. It's difficult to keep yourself motivated and to maintain a positive a positive attitude all the time. So I think that was just naturally where I was at. It's just difficult to keep yourself motivated when you're working on a long-term goal. And for me, because I had used the first part of my savings, the money that I had saved as a result of moving back home to pay off my student loans, it meant that I had to, I guess, start from zero from about September of 2018. So basically from March to September of 2018, I was able to save a lot of money because I had moved back home, so I was no longer renting. And then I used that money to pay off the remainder of my student loans. So it meant that in September of 2018, my bank balance was back to zero. I was back to square one. I had no savings, and I was starting to save for my house deposit. So I guess, like, just because, you know, saving for a deposit usually takes a number of years, I think I was just putting a lot of pressure on myself because I had been at home for about a year and a half by the time we had reached September of 2019. And I was just thinking, like, yes, I've got about, I think at that time I had about 30 something grand saved up for my mortgage deposit. I remember it was in the 30s that I had saved up by about September of 2019. And I was doing more research about the whole house buying process and the different schemes available, like the Help to Buy equity loan, or, you know, just you going for a traditional mortgage and just trying to have as large as a deposit as possible. And I decided, for me personally, that I would not be using the equity loan, that I was just going to save up as big as a deposit as possible, and then, you know, apply for a mortgage from a bank or from a mortgage lender. But that whole process, although it was very good to educate myself about exactly what I needed to do and how much I needed to save in order to get a mortgage from a bank, like, and roughly what kind of house prices I could be looking at, it also made me realise how far away I was from achieving my goal, in terms of, like, although I had saved a sizable amount of money, I still felt like I had quite a lot that I needed to save up in order to get the kind of house that I was dreaming for. So I guess because I again started to feel so far away from achieving my house goals, because I realized that I had a lot more money to save in terms of my mortgage, that made me feel really down, because I just felt like this dream of getting my own house, I felt like it was really far off, that I still had at least probably a year left to save up enough money to actually get the deposit, and then have enough money for like furniture, to pay the additional fees like the survey fees, the solicitor fees, all the associated fees that come with buying a house. So because in my head I felt like I still had another year left in the process of saving up, that was very demotivating again. That made me feel down. I didn't want to spend another year living with my parents, and I just felt disheartened. So that was another reason why I felt really down about life at that time. And I think it definitely was another thing that contributed to my my quarter life crisis. And it's quite difficult, especially when you look back and you think, if only I had been wiser with money in the past, I would have had this mortgage deposit ages ago. That was what was running through my head as well. I also just found it really difficult not living with regret at that point of time, because I know that if only I had been wiser with my money in the past, like when I was younger, like as soon as I graduated and got my first proper job, if only I had spent those years being wiser with money and actually starting to put money aside as early as possible towards getting my house, I would have had this mortgage deposit ages ago. I would have had my own house ages ago. But I wasn't wise with money. I made a lot of financial mistakes, and that is one of the reasons why I'm 30 at my parents' house, saving up for a mortgage deposit. So I guess just knowing that, if only I had done things differently when I was younger, that in itself was pretty difficult to deal with. It was hard not to kick myself in the teeth for past mistakes, and that just made me feel pretty down about myself and about life. And also it's quite difficult as well as a millennial, when we shouldn't be comparing our lives to our friends' lives. All of us, we all have different paths. We all have different success timings, and even though yes, you may have went to uni with someone, it doesn't necessarily mean that you both would achieve certain things at exactly the same time. Like, all of us have different lives, but I know that we're humans, and it's sometimes difficult for us to not compare ourselves to other people, especially our peers or like friends, like family members, cousins. It's sometimes difficult to not compare ourselves to people that are of the same age group, people that we grew up with, that we kind of know their background, and we see them achieving certain things. We see them buying their own flats, buying their own houses, and then you're just sitting there at your parents' house trying to save as much as possible every single month. So that's the position that I was in. I had a couple friends who had already bought their properties maybe a year or 2 years before that, and I just couldn't help thinking, like, damn, like, the reason why they've been able to buy their properties is because they stayed their asses at home, whilst I was renting my own place, thinking that I was all mature because I had moved out of my parents' house. They chose the much smarter they chose the more smarter options, and they actually stayed their asses at home, and they lived with their parents until they were able to save enough to get their own places, and then they moved out, and now they have their own properties. So I guess that my living situation was definitely a source of frustration for me as well, just not being where I kind of wanted to be. I really wanted to have my own place and to be on the property ladder, and I couldn't do that until I had saved up enough money. So that was pretty difficult to deal with as well. So yeah, so those two, the whole career situation, and then also my living situation, and just feeling like, you know, I still had about a year to go towards saving up for my house and all of that jazz. That was very difficult for me to deal with mentally, and it caused a lot of frustration. It just caused a lot of worry and anxiety. I always felt so worried about the future. Sorry, I've got some birds outside that are making up so much noise, so I'm really sorry if you can hear them, but I can't do anything about them at the moment. But yeah, those were definitely the two of the main sources of frustration for me, and I definitely feel those were major contributors to my quarter life crisis before. I do feel like I actually experienced a quarter life crisis, and not just like a couple weeks or so of feeling down about life, because it just really affected my day-to-day mood. Like I remember feeling mentally, I felt so down, and I guess unhopeful about the future. I felt really down and unhopeful, and physically it affected me as well, because I remember I felt so fatigued during that period. I had literally no physical strength. My body was so tired at the time. I always just felt like I had no energy whatsoever. I remember that I was able to like sleep for 10 hours plus, straight, continuously. So I definitely noticed changes in not only mentally but also in my body. I think it took a toll on my body as well. So it just wasn't good. It wasn't a good period mentally, physically, or anything. And I think that's why like our mindset is so important, because our mindset can definitely affect, if we allow it to, it can affect our physical health as well and cause actual health conditions. So it's really important for us to try and get our mindset right and to be in a good space mentally before it starts taking a toll on our body. So yeah, I think that's really important. But for me, I definitely saw the effects it was having on my body. I remember I took a trip to the doctor because I just felt so fatigued and so tired, and they told me to take vitamin D tablets because they also said that I had some liver functioning issues. So I think, yeah, it was a very difficult time for me mentally and physically, to be honest. There was just a lot going on. And then also, I think what didn't help the situation as well was the fact that I'm really, really ambitious. Like, I have always been really ambitious because I've grown up always expecting the best for myself. So I grew up as an A-star student. Like, I always had good grades. I always aimed to get good grades in school as well, and I always grew up believing and expecting that I'd be in a very high, well-paid job when I was older. I expected to live in a massive house. I expected to have lots of money. I just had very high expectations for myself, and that is not a bad thing at all. But when those stuff don't materialize, or when they take much longer than you expected to materialize, or even when, you know, they end up requiring so much more work than you expected to, sometimes it is disheartening, and sometimes it is hard to remain positive. And I just feel like I don't know if I would call myself overly ambitious, but my highly ambitious attitude, my highly ambitious personality, it doesn't help. Because even though, like, yes, when I think about it, I have achieved so much in my career so far, stuff that, you know, not everyone has been able to achieve. Despite that, I still feel like I've got so much more to go, because it's the thing about life is that when you achieve your goals, you never feel content. You always create bigger and better goals for yourself. You always move the goalposts. So like, even though yes, I've achieved a lot of great things so far, my I'm always moving the goalposts. I'm always trying to achieve more. So I guess, and that ultimately ends up creating a sense of never having achieved enough, when you're always moving and aiming towards the next biggest thing. So yeah, I feel like having a highly ambitious personality is a it can have its negative points if you don't rein it in. I think it's like the balcony and the basement analogy. It's really good to be really ambitious, but when that personality trait goes into overdrive, you can end up causing yourself a lot of unnecessary anxiety and depression, when you're never happy about what you've achieved in life, and when you're always thinking, okay, I've got to do more, I've got to achieve more, I've got to be more, I've got to earn more, etc., etc. So I think that's where my head was at. That was the headspace I was in at the time. And then I guess as well, I've kind of like alluded to this in one of the previous points, but I have made a lot of mistakes in my 20s. I made a lot of financial mistakes, and I'm sure if I haven't already, I will do a video about those financial mistakes. But I've made a lot of financial mistakes, and if I hadn't made those financial mistakes, I would be loaded right about now. I would have a lot of money. So there was a lot of periods in my 20s where I was just living in regret and just trying to think, oh, like, why didn't my older siblings teach me about money saving, or teach me about how to get on a property ladder? Why didn't my friends tell me? Why didn't my parents tell me? Why didn't I know and figure stuff out myself earlier? There was a lot of shoulda, woulda, couldas, and living in that kind of space is not helpful to anyone at all. So yeah, I find it really difficult not living in a place of regret, and that as well caused a lot of anxiety. It definitely made me feel like a failure, and yeah, I just spent a lot of time in whilst I was approaching 30 regretting some of my past mistakes, and that is not helpful or healthy for anyone at all. So as you can see, there were a lot of reasons, there were a lot of factors that contributed to my quarter life crisis. I don't think it was any one particular factor by itself, but when you add them up and when you look at them collectively, yeah, the anxiety was there. I just didn't feel accomplished as a 30-year-old. I just didn't feel like I was where I should be in my life at that time. And I just think I was possibly being a bit too harsh on myself. But at the same time, I do feel like I have made some pretty major mistakes in my 20s. I do feel like those mistakes were pretty major, and although yes, I wish that those mistakes were never made, another part of me is also like, Rachel, this is just like the cycle of life here. You live and you learn. Like, those mistakes, yes, they were painful, they've costed you, but they've also taught you so much, and you wouldn't actually be the person that you are today if you didn't make those mistakes. So I'm trying to tell myself as well, like, everything happens for a reason, and although I may never truly understand why some of those things had to happen, it all happens for a reason. And I've learned so much, and like now I could even teach other people, like younger people, my nieces, or even just share positive adulting videos like I'm doing today, I can use those mistakes, use those pains for purpose. And that is definitely what I'm trying to do going forward, as long as trying to reduce my mistakes and make fewer mistakes as well. But yeah, I think my makeup is done. I would wear lashes, but I'm not going to today actually. I can't be bothered. That was a really bad accent, but yeah, me can't be bothered. So I'm just gonna wear mascara and call it a day. But yeah, those are the reasons why I had a quarter life crisis. And I guess if you are currently in a similar mental space that I was in when I was approaching 30, I guess what I would say to you is just try as much as possible to focus on the positives. Try and focus on all the stuff that you have achieved, the places you have been, the people you have met, the opportunities that you have had, you know, and just try not to give the stuff that you haven't been able to achieve any time of day. I think it's difficult for someone to say try and not think about the negatives instead of trying not to think about something. I think it's more powerful if we try to think about things and we just focus on the positive stuff and let those things take up space in our mind. Hopefully when we focus on the positive things so much, there'll be no time or energy left to even focus on the negative things. So yeah, that is my message for you today actually. Like, if you're in a similar space, if you're, you know, just reflecting on your own life and regretting past mistakes, thinking like, damn, if only I was wiser, if only I was smarter, I'd have this by now, I'd be this by now. There's just no point. There's just no point living in regret. We just need to try and see all of our life as a journey, and life inevitably has ups and downs, and as long as we try and learn as much as we can, as much as possible from our life experiences, that really is the success in life. Successes in life isn't even really about earning X amount of money or working at X company or getting married by X age. I think probably true success in life is being able to live and to learn and to grow and then to inspire other people. That probably is the true definition of success. But yeah, let me put some earrings on because I feel like I'm looking a bit plain. So one moment. So yeah, that is what I wanted to share with you today. You know, hopefully it's now even clearer why I went through a quarter life crisis as I was approaching 30 years old, and I just pray that if you're experiencing or feeling something similar, that just hearing from someone else just makes you feel a bit better, makes you feel like, okay, I'm not the only one, like you're not, you know, makes you feel like you're not behind in life, that there are people of similar age to you or of the same age who haven't made it, who haven't achieved everything in life, who still have a long way to go. So it doesn't make you feel like you're behind or that you're a failure, because a lot of us here, we're still trying to work, we're just still trying to sort things out and work things through. We don't have our lives sorted out. Our lives are not perfect. But I know in our day and age, like, we rarely see people sharing their journeys. We tend to see people sharing once they've made it, once they've achieved their goals and they're celebrating their successes. But it's quite rare for us to see people who are actually on the journey, working towards their goals in the actual midst of working, you know. So that's why I wanted to share this video, and I do hope you found it helpful. Yeah, this is my makeup look. I hope you do like it. It is an everyday look. It's very natural. This is kind of like how I look every day, to be honest, so it's nothing special. But yeah, I think I'm ready now. yes, so I'm gonna go. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave a comment below if you have resonated with anything I've said today. You know, subscribe to the channel if you're interested in adulting videos, law of attraction, stuff like that. And also follow me on Instagram as well. I have a law of attraction page on my Instagram account, so follow me on there if you want, you know, law of attraction principles, affirmations, tips, you know, stuff like that. So follow me on Instagram, and yeah, I will see you soon in my next video. Take care and God bless.